Welcome to What the Plus, a critical overview of the last century of family entertainment as filtered through Disney Plus. I am Garrett Martin, a writer, an editor, your host. Thanks for listening. So last November, I took a brief break from our irregularly scheduled discussions of Disney Plus programs to talk about a trip I took to Disney World. This is going to be another one of those episodes where I sort of ditched the normal format. No guest. We're not talking about a movie or a TV show. I'm just going to tell you about my own personal life experiences at a theme park during a pandemic. So when I went back in October, the park had been open for about 3 months since closing for the pandemic. I drove down from Atlanta to check it out, was not willing to get on a plane for reasons I shouldn't have to explain. Capacity was still really low at the time. Not a lot of people were there. Masks were still mandatory everywhere, except when you were actively eating or drinking at designated locations. You couldn't just walk around without a mask on drinking. And as somebody who obviously wasn't vaccinated yet, and who was also super cautious, maybe paranoid about the virus, I wore 2 masks the whole time. I only took them off when I ate. I only ate outdoors or in my hotel room. I didn't go on any attractions that required sitting stationary indoors for any length of time. So that meant no time for my beloved Country Bears or the Enchanted Tiki Room. I didn't catch anything while I was there, and I actually felt pretty safe the whole time. And you can go listen to that episode if you want. It went up right around the election. It was early November. You can find it through whatever apps you're listening to this thing on. So fast forward to earlier this week, the middle of May 2021. So I'm fully vaccinated. Got my second shot at this point about a month ago. I flew for the first time in 14 months earlier in May for a work trip. If I wasn't vaccinated, I would have been absolutely freaking out the entire time. But despite a packed plane there and back, I generally felt safe. My plan was to drive down to Disney World this past week, but when the gas panic hit, I quickly scrapped those plans to drive, and I booked a flight to Orlando. You know what? I didn't want to get stuck somewhere in South Georgia or North Florida without gas. And if you live on the East Coast, especially the Southeast, you probably know what's happening with the gas supply here. It's unusual. So I know the pandemic, it's not over yet. I know there's still a risk doing anything like this, anything involving large groups of people. But if I'm going to trust the science, I should also probably trust the science of the vaccine and start to feel safe getting back to something that more closely resembles what life used to be. And for me, yes, life means going to Disney theme parks way too often. So, what's Disney World like today in the late spring of 2021, and what are hopefully the final days of the pandemic? How's it feel on the ground and in the parks, and what do you need to know before you go? What do you have to prepare for? Here's what I saw earlier this week during a 4-day trip to Disney World, and what you should probably keep in mind if you're weighing a trip down there anytime soon. So, first off, if you plan on going to Disney World, you still need to make a reservation in advance. And that's for whatever specific park you want to go to. They've raised capacity since I was there back in October by a very noticeable degree, but you still need an advanced reservation for any theme park. You can do park hopping now, which was not an option when I went back in October, but you have to specify which park you want to go to at the beginning of the day, and you can't hop to the second park until later in the afternoon. As travel continues to pick up, I imagine it could become difficult to get reservations for some of the high demand days. You know, I haven't checked. I would not be surprised if next weekend, which is Memorial Day weekend, one of the busiest of the year, is already booked up, at least for Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom, which are currently the 2 parks in the highest demand. Also, if you want to do anything within the parks or the Disney World complex that requires a separate reservation, whether that's something like Oga's Cantina or the Savvy's Workshop lightsaber experience at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or even just getting a reservation at any of the sit-down restaurants in the parks or the hotels, you're going to need to be on top of that well in advance. I scheduled my trip this past week over a month in advance in mid-April, and at that time, it was already really hard to get a reservation at most restaurants inside the parks, and even some of the higher demand hotel restaurants were already booked up. So if you're going, you need to know well in advance when you're going. You need to get that reservation for the actual parks situated. You need to buy your tickets well in advance. And if you want to eat anywhere, or if you want to go to any of the bars that require reservations, you need to knock those out as early as you can. There are no fast passes right now, so you don't have to worry about waking up at midnight 60 days in advance to get the Snow White roller coaster fast pass. But you absolutely need to channel that same energy, that same fast pass mentality, if you want to get any other reservation on the resort right now. Also, as I've said, capacity has definitely increased since the fall, and with it has come a far more blasé attitude towards physical distancing. You'll still see markers on the ground in every queue and throughout the parks, reminding you to keep your distance, but you absolutely cannot count on others to actually observe that distance, or even on cast members to enforce it. If you don't think you're ready to handle a constant crowd surrounding you, getting right up on top of you while waiting in line for a ride, then you might not be ready to go back to Disney World. Similarly, mask usage is very much a mixed bag right now. Disney was rightfully criticized for how it's handled its mask mandate. So last week, the CDC advised that fully vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks outdoors. In response, Disney announced around 10 p.m. on a Friday night that, as of the very next day, guests at Disney World no longer had to wear masks outdoors unless they were waiting in line for an attraction. And that's all guests, whether they're vaccinated or not. The change was announced after the parks had closed for the day, effective the very next morning, which was not nearly enough advance warning for guests who maybe only felt safe at the parks as long as everybody was masked, or more worrisomely, cast members who are already in a fraught position, having to work for a living in a job that puts them in constant contact with customers who may or may not take proper precautions. So as you can imagine, almost nobody wears masks while walking the parks anymore. Cast members are generally on point when it comes to making people mask up in line, or on rides, or indoors. Every ride at Magic Kingdom, for instance, had multiple cast members stationed throughout the queue to remind people to keep their masks on. And then cast members are at the entrance of every store or restaurant to make sure people are masked. Still, while you're outdoors, you'll be almost completely surrounded by people who are not wearing masks. If you're not yet fully vaccinated, or even if you are and you're still worried about catching it even with the vaccine, just be warned about that mask situation. Obviously, masks aren't going to be a permanent part of our daily lives or anything, and it's harder to wear them in the heat of a Florida summer than in the fall when I was last there. Still, the way Disney went about changing that mask mandate, they announced it with like 10 hours notice before the parks reopened, after some of its employees, the people most impacted by the change, were probably already asleep for the night. It's just really disappointing that they did it that way. That's the kind of major policy change that deserves a decent amount of lead time, both to let cast members prepare for it, but also so guests can make an informed decision about whether they feel safe traveling to the parks. Again, I am fully vaxxed, so I would still have booked a trip regardless of the mask mandate, but it was a surprising and honestly kind of irresponsible call for Disney to make. The CDC's guidance said fully vaxxed people are safe without masks outdoors, while Disney and other theme parks, they're absolutely not alone in this, just immediately said, all right, everyone can go maskless, whether they're vaxxed or not. I mean, there are tremendous obstacles when it comes to verifying if a customer is vaccinated or not. I don't even know if it's legal, but perhaps it's best to err on the side of caution and keep the mask mandate in place for all guests until the CDC says everybody can go maskless. I don't know, just a thought. Again, though, I personally didn't feel unsafe. I ate indoors, I drank indoors, I drank outdoors, I drank alone in my hotel room. I had a really good time. I even found a new favorite restaurant, the Skipper Canteen in Adventureland. Seriously, it is worth the reservation. Who knows if I caught anything? If I did, hopefully this vaccine keeps it from becoming something serious. But I'm at the point where if the alternative is just staying at home still, after 14 months of doing nothing, well, I can't abide by that. I got to get out into the world. That's just the way I'm wired, I guess. I don't know. So at Tomorrowland, I enjoyed Carousel of Progress for the first time in a few years. If you haven't experienced the show, created by Disney for the 1964 World's Fair, you're missing out on classic Disney entertainment. It's a little schmaltzy, a little too earnest, entirely cornpone, equally in love with the past and the future, with both nostalgia and the gleaming promises of science. And it's a perfect summary of the mid-century utopian optimism at the heart of so much of Walt Disney's work. It's a show explicitly about how science and technology make our life better if we only trust in them. And that's how I feel about right now, about the moment we're living in, about this vaccine, about trusting in the science that delivered it to us, and stepping back into the lives we've put on pause, not with abandon, but cautiously, smartly, safely, aware of the risks, but also secure in modern medicine and the protections it should bring us. I'm not going to tell you what to do or say what you should be safe with. Well, I will tell you to get the vaccine, because as many people need to get it as possible to get us past this pandemic. So please just go get the vaccine already. But I'm not going to say you should feel safe going to Disney World or any other place with large amounts of unmasked people until we are further out of this crisis than we currently are. I will tell you, though, that I was there, and because I'm fully vaccinated, I felt safe. Even if I did catch the virus, hopefully the vaccine will keep it from becoming anything serious. And I similarly trust that I won't be able to give it to any of the people I love because, like me, they're all vaxxed too. Now, I was bummed that Trader Sam's was closed. The Poly's still being refurbished, so no Tiki Bar at Disney World right now. At least Abracadabra is still chugging along. The Nomad Lounge at Animal Kingdom. Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar, a.k.a. the Indiana Jones Bar. Enzo's Hideaway. I went there for the first time, had a fantastic Manhattan. Look, I really enjoy the bars at Disney World. Maybe that's a problem. I don't know. Maybe that'll be my next park special on the show. Who knows? All right, that about wraps this all up. Next week, we'll be back to normal. I'm going to have a guest. We're going to talk about a movie or TV show. Maybe you'll listen to it. Maybe you'll even enjoy it. I don't know. Until then, I'm Garrett Martin. Thanks for listening to What the Plus, and have a great week.